Okay, it's been a few days. How you feeling?
Yeah, it hurts when you're that close to really solidifying your place in history. You're gonna do something that no one's done in 40 years. It just hurts.
Yeah, that must really hurt. And look, I know that people are immediately putting asterisks on your championships. They're making fun of your players. They're celebrating your downfall. They're taking every opportunity to hit you right in the nutsack, right in the balls. They're really tearing you apart right now.
Okay, but those people are wrong because
Huh? Oh, no, I completely agree with all of those people.
of course you do.
Welcome back. I owe somebody something. Go check the low qual bracket challenge on NHL.com if you joined it, and tell me if you're David, because I owe you a sweater. And I haven't heard from you yet, but I also haven't put this in the beginning of a video yet. So contact me, DM me on Twitter or Discord or wherever. Reach out. No one try anything funny here, please, for the love of God. Reach out. We'll get everything situated because you are the grand winner. You had a great bracket, man. I think you ended up with like 310 points. Solid. It was down to you and one other guy at the very end. Very impressed. I hate you. I really wanted to win it myself. I didn't score any points, second round or beyond. I wanted an excuse to buy myself another sweater. Now I got to buy you one. Just unbelievable. But David, seriously, congratulations. Hit us up. We're going to get you a new sweater. I'm very excited about it. This video is about free agents, UFAs, maybe an RFA in there a little bit. Not trades. We're going to get there in another video, but free agents. Free agency opens up on the 13th of July, I believe. It's going to be busy for the Bruins. It should be busy for the Bruins. We are going to talk about how to build the best team for next year while not crushing future years. If the rumors about Bergeron are true and he's coming back, the team's going to try to win a cup next year. That's how we're going to try to approach this. So I'm not doing a retool or a rebuild in this exercise. I'm also not giving 8 years to somebody on the wing that is going to cost $8 million a year. It just doesn't make sense with where this team is. So we're going to try to walk that line as best we can. You'll see timestamps below. Those are going to tell you who we're talking about when. So, I mean, positionally, we're going to start with goalies, go defense, then wingers and centers, basically in order of importance. You're going to talk about more and more guys as we go because goaltending, we're barely talking about anybody. Defense, we're barely talking about anybody. Last video, I went over our needs and what we have in the system. I'm going to touch on it really quickly at the beginning of each section, and then we're going to move on, all right? Because if you really want to deep dive into it, go to the previous video, or actually the video before the previous video. One of the previous videos. You get it. Lastly, shout out to Dom Lucian over at The Athletic. I used a bunch of his graphics again. I just really like the way he puts it together. I visited many analytics sites for this just to kind of get an idea of what I liked. NHL Stat Trick is one of them. Money Puck is another one of them. Cap Friendly, all over that. You know me. So shout out to those guys. There'll be links below and everything along those lines if you want to pursue it yourself. This is a conversation. So put below what you think about some of these guys and names that I should have mentioned. Again, UFAs. We're talking about free agents, maybe a couple RFAs. We're not doing trades yet. But let's get right into it. Goaltenders. Not really a need, right? Swayman and Ullmark are between the pipes. In case of injury, we either have Kaiser or Bussi. Neither one of those names actually gives me that much confidence, but Swayman and Ullmark absolutely do. What we need at the position, I guess we could use a little more depth, but there's really not a lot of names in the free agency market that I would go for, especially because you're going to have to spend money on them. And right now, I'd rather roll the dice with what we have and just hope for no massive injuries to both guys, right? Because otherwise you're looking at Rittich maybe. There's really no point in this conversation. What are we doing? Let's move to defensemen. And let's start with the left side because the answer is going to be really simple for you. We've got Lindholm, Grizz, Forbort. Behind them we have Riley and Zaboral. Potential guys that could be coming up, Sean and Callahan. What we need? Nothing. that is a solid left side with solid depth. There's no options on the market because there's no reason to talk about them. On the right side, similar. McAvoy, Carlo, Clifton. That's solid. I would take that all day. Berglund and Zaboral are probably your potentials there. Zaboral being a candidate to swap over, obviously. And what we need here is maybe a little bit of depth. A guy that, say, Clifton or Carlo goes down. I'm not even gonna say the other guy because I would die. One of these guys goes down. The switch to the right side doesn't work well as Zaboral. You've already traded Riley at this point. Something like that happens. So do you invest this offseason in a depth right defenseman? I don't think you do. Again, I think you hope that internally you have a guy that can step up. But if you're thinking, what could we get? A Colin Miller reunion wouldn't be the worst idea. Just a guy who can kind of stay as that 7th or 8th guy. Your Calvin DeHaan's still kind of interesting. Shutdown guy, plays responsibly. Left-handed, but has been known to play both sides. He could look good with Forbort as like a shutdown pairing. But those are the only guys that I really think of when I think of just a cheap defenseman that you could throw in there in most systems and just know that they're not going to be leaky. Because that's the only reason we would get a right defenseman at all. And good, we're done with the back end. I know this is, if you really wanted to talk defenseman, tell me, because I will. But if we're talking about next year for the Bruins, I don't see it. Let's talk about things we should talk about. We're going to start with the left side, even though I said the left side worries me more than the right side in the last video. Because I think there's really only one candidate that I want to gun for, that I want to spend money on in the offseason. A big part of this is who are you willing to spend a limited cap on? Because right now we have about $2 million space. Let's pretend we trade Riley. All right, that's another $3 million right there. You're up to $5 million because we were probably moving someone from the left side. Let's pretend we trade DeBrusk. We're up to $9 million. And let's pretend we could either buy out or get rid of Foligno. We're up to $12 million. Not unrealistic, but it's definitely not a sure thing all those happen. And losing some of those guys causes issues elsewhere. But let's pretend for a moment we have some space. Center is important. Right wing, potentially top 6, is important. Left side, Martian and Hall take care of your top 6. That's not changing. Frederick, you're hoping for another step forward on that third line. That's not changing. Foligno is a concern, but you're not going out to get fourth liners this year. You're hoping internally you have something. You're not giving up assets to get fourth liners. You might sign one in free agency, but it still doesn't make a lot of sense. Because on that left side, your potentials to fill in Merkulov, Koppinen, and then you have Haula and DeBrusk if questions are answered in other positions. One of those guys could get moved over. Again, DeBrusk might be gone at this point. But Haula, you're hoping, actually bumps over to the left side and Frederick gets dropped down. That's what you're hoping for. Keep in mind that when problems are solved, talent trickles down. It's very, very important to recognize that while you're doing this kind of exercise. So what do we need at this position? Nothing-ish, right? We have very little faith in Frederick and Foligno. That's the problem. That is the big problem. And we don't have enough depth on the right side to really swap someone over and feel good about it unless Haula or DeBrusk can trickle down. So what we need is a good depth signing. But it's more complicated than that, because why would you spend money on the left side if you already have what you think are 2 really good top 6 guys, a third line guy in Frederick, and then you just need to fill in Foligno's spot because hopefully he's not there anymore. It's a fourth line spot. Don't spend money there. It has to be a guy who has potential really high upside and is going to sign a short-term cheap deal. Does that guy exist? Maybe. Mason Marchment. I don't even know how to say that. I think it's Marchment. It's spelt like Marchment. 47 points in 54 games played last year with the Panthers. Now, hey, their scoring was up, but he spent very little time on the power play. He was a third line guy. His shooting percentage was around 14%, I think, so it was high. But This guy was basically making league min to be a total stud on the third line. He has never had that before in his career. So here's what you do. And we're not going to be the only team looking at this. If you can get this guy for a bridge deal, say 2.5 to 3 million 2 years, a prove it deal. Tell me that was real. And you could put him on the left side. Frederick bumps down. If you believe anything about this year, if you believe that he could do 2/3 of what he did this year, then you 100% pull the trigger on that. No fucking way are you not calling about that guy. You have to ask. You have to see if he's considering your team. And you have to see if he's considering a bridge deal. The only way we fill something on that left side is with Mason Marchment, and it's a bridge deal. Because money is needed elsewhere. But if he goes for 2 million or 3 million to another team for low years, and I hear the Bruins weren't even in on it, I am going to lose my mind. Because that is exactly the type of guy that is risk versus reward. That's what you're looking at right there. Also, he's played both sides, so it's potential that he could bump over to the right side too. Let's move on from the left wingers. Easy peasy, right? Not a lot of names because we're really not trying to spend money there. On the right side, it's completely different, even though I'm more confident in the right side this year than I am the left because I'm that high on Liesel. God, I'm really buying into the hype. I hope I'm not wrong about that. Pasternak is your first line guy, potentially. We know how that went last season. DeBrusk, Smith, and Steen. I don't think that's that bad. I do not think that's bad. Potentials on that right side. Liesel and Studnicka. Really probably got to explore Studnicka on the wing at this point. We have virtually no true right-wing prospects in the system. Like high-end guys other than Liesel and potentially Studnicka. Left wing, of course, can switch, but that's not always as easy as it's made out to be. Now, there's a couple guys I'm going to talk about here that are right wingers that we need to switch to the left, given the circumstances. What we need is a top 6 guy and a little bit of depth for injury concerns. Liesel jumping into the league next year on the right side would fix this. If he's that good, if we think he can be productive on a top 6 or top 9 role on that right side, then 100%. That problem is solved. Let's just get some depth. But we're going to talk about a few names, top 6-wise, before we even entertain that. First guy up is Nichushkin. 52 points in 62 games played. He's the big prize on the right side as far as non-franchise guys go. 27 years old, a heavy power forward who can forecheck, plays responsible in his own zone, great analytics. The guy is the whole package. Late bloomer potentially. Also has the potential for not being quite as good as this past year has shown. You should be very nervous. Teams always pick apart the champion. A lot of times, a team isn't as dominant as the Avalanche just were. The Avalanche are so dominant that you'd be nervous about grabbing players off there because they now have to work with lesser talent on your team. That felt insulting. I didn't mean it. But you know what I mean. Nichushkin's a perfect candidate for that. But if he's looking for somewhere in the 4 to 5 year range, I'd be real tempted. 5.5 to 6 million, which is below what he's going to get offered as a free agent, I'm sure. But he's the kind of guy that would slot in on that top 6, and all of a sudden you're Pasta, Nichushkin, Marchand, Hall for the next 4 years. If Marchand can last that long, you're feeling real good. You're feeling really good. And if you think of it like this, say DeBrusk has to leave because Nichushkin comes in. I'd rather have Nichushkin over DeBrusk. And if he's signing a $6 million deal, it's only a $2 million difference over DeBrusk. It makes it a lot more, interesting to say it like that. That's your first candidate. Evander Kane is a second. And the only reason I'm bringing him up is because people keep asking. I know he's a left winger. I think he'd do fine on the right side, personally. No. I can't do it. And this isn't even it is kind of I'm nervous about him as a person kind of thing. I know that there's accusations back and forth between him and whoever that relationship is at this point. I don't think they're still married, but awful, awful stuff. Awful accusations back and forth. He was accused of other things off the ice as well. I don't want to dive all into that. That's a grown man. I don't need to be involved in his personal life whatsoever. But I'm a big, where there's smoke, there's fire kind of guy. And I am not willing to give this guy term and money. It's just not going to happen. And I got to be honest, even if it was a 1-year deal, I'd rather stay away from him at all. Like just completely. Just stay away from him. I'm not interested. I'm not interested. I know he could help the team with what he can do on the ice. His last team seemed to really fucking hate the guy. But I know he could help with his skill on the ice. I don't know if that's worth it. And me personally, I'm going to stay away from that one. Stay away from that one big time. Third option I kind of like is Palat. Another left winger, but again, just such a cerebral player. Put him on the right. I think he'd be fine. 49 points in 77 games played. Just an absolute stud. Again, 200-foot game. Responsible. Scores big-time goals as we saw in the playoffs. The only thing you don't like is he's 31. And he's probably asking for at least 5 years. Right? That's probably what he's looking for. Real term. If he's looking for 3 years, ooh, I'm paying his price. I really am. I think Palat's that good. I think he's clutch. And I know that's such a stupid non-analytics thing to say. He just impresses the hell out of me. And you put him in a top 6 role on that right side, I think he'd really flourish. I think he'd be great. Because he's been great in Tampa all these past years. Again, he spent time top 6. He spent time third line. He bounced around a little bit. But he really was a big part of their top 6 through the playoffs. I think he's great. And I would definitely be looking into him. Fourth option's a bit odd. Niederreiter from the Canes. 44 points in 75 games played. I don't think this guy is a top 6 guy. It's another one that... The reason I'm talking about these guys is they haven't priced themselves so far out that it's just absurd, right? They're not the Gaudreaus, the Forsbergs. I'm not even talking about them. Because we're not going to give someone $9 million in this offseason. It's just not going to happen. Niederreiter is looking like he's going to command a decent amount of money. But he reminds me of a player that is okay on the second line, but really shines as a third liner. And we already have Coyle and we already have Smith. I don't think I need a third guy that's like you're a really good third liner, you know? So I kind of want to stay away from it. There's something I don't like about it. He's going to come up for a lot of people on that right side. I want the Bruins to stay away from that one. Judging by how I talked about all these players, about these 4, you can probably guess that my choice is Nichushkin. I think we need to be involved in that pretty heavily. The most important position, again, is going to be centers, so if nothing happens on that right side, I'm not losing my mind. But he's the one that I'm really looking at would be hugely beneficial to the team. As far as depth guys go, there's a couple of names that I was looking at. Phil Kessel. Okay. You can laugh. But a total defensive liability. But you throw him on the right side and maybe move Smith around somewhere. I think that'd be kind of fun to watch. Guy can still sling the puck. Good passer. Can hit the back of the net. Had a rough year in that regard. I don't know. It's not going to happen because he'd have to be super cheap with very little term, and that's not what he's looking for, I'm sure. But it's definitely a guy I kind of was like, well, that'd be fun, right? Evan Rodriguez from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Small, versatile winger who had 43 points in 82 games while going on an absolute bender to start the season. Just magical and cooled way off for the second half. So he's a little streaky. I'd say he's somewhere between those 2 players that you saw at the very beginning and at the very end. I'd take a look. I doubt he's asking for a reasonable amount. It feels like he's probably going to just biggest contract he can get, which, I mean, as a depth guy for us wouldn't really fly. But I'd take a look. If for any reason he was around the $3 million mark, which there's some projections that have him that low, I definitely would be considering this. And it might be a Smith swap. I mean, if you brought him in, I know that doesn't really help, right? You're just exchanging depth pieces. But it's definitely a guy that if you brought in, you'd see where Smith could land. I don't think Rodriguez isn't a fourth line guy, but there's potential he could be a decent second liner, bounce back and forth with Smith during the dog days of the actual season. He's someone that I find really interesting. Another depth option that I've been saying for about a few years now, at least, Colin Blackwell, Toronto Maple Leafs. This is my guy. I'm going to spoil it. This is the guy I want. I don't know if it's just wanting to be right. I really don't, because I've mentioned him so often over the past few years. But he's just such a great true bottom six guy, can play any scenario, responsible in his own end, and he's the kind of guy that's probably going to get 1.2 to 1.4 million for a couple of years, and is just super likable by the fans. I think that would be a nice depth signing for the right side. Those are my two, Nichushkin and Blackwell. Those are the two I really want to look at. This is easy. We're cruising right along. Maybe I should have chosen more players to talk about, but I don't know. That would have been exhausting. You'll notice, and I already mentioned this, it's really hard to talk about franchise guys. Gaudreau, Forsberg, we're going to talk about Kadri here in a minute. Those are franchise superstars, but those are guys who are going to command very high price tags for a lot of term. And with the way this Bruins team is built, I want to win a cup next year, obviously. Like, build the best team you can now. But there's irresponsible moves that can be made. And signing Johnny Gaudreau would absolutely be one of them. So, let's move on to centers. What we have, we think we have Bergeron. So, I'm going to include him. We think we have Bergeron. Doesn't change the fact that we're going to need a top six guy. Because below him, we got Haula, Coyle, Nosek. Potentials in the center position internally. Stanika, Beecher, Merkulov, Frederick. You'll notice that there's some overlap in names and positions. Nothing wrong with that. None of those guys are a second line guy. None of them. So, let's move on. What we need is a top six guy. I had listed here a bottom six one as well, which is really a fourth liner. I don't think that's true. And even if it were, we don't spend money on it. We don't spend money on it. We have a guy, we have enough options there that one of them should be able to, be decent in a fourth line role. That's how I feel, at least. The focus here is a top six center, which is fucking impossible. The market is terrifying. Don't expect any of these guys to go for less than $6 million, and that might even be stretching it. They might be going way more than that. And your first guy that everyone's going to talk about is Nazem Kadri. Congratulations, first of all, to Kadri. Dealt with a bunch of shit during that playoff run. First Muslim to have his name on the cup. As a player, shoot, I don't remember that report. There might be names on that cup as far as staff goes, but I don't know. He might be just the first Muslim to have it on the cup. Either way, that's pretty fucking cool to me. Grow the game, So, Kadri, one of two big fish on the market as far as centers go. 31 years old, 87 points in 71 games played on an absolute juggernaut. Fuck me, he's expensive. I mean expensive. Someone's going to sit here and go, that's a top six center. We need a top six center. Our window's opening, such as maybe the Rangers. Let's give him a big paycheck. Let's make sure we get him. We can't do it. And the only reason I include him in the conversation is because everyone was going to ask about him. We can't smartly offer him money and term. And let's be honest, I'm not so sure he's worth it. Because those are some inflated numbers, man. Some real inflated numbers. Someone gives him $9 million. I don't know. I don't know about how I feel about that one. Here's a weird one. Evgeny Malkin. 42 points in 41 games played. He's set to hit free agency. Feels strange. Massive injuries in his past, and he simply isn't the same guy, but someone's going to swing big on him, and it better not be us. It better fucking not. Dude's probably going to be real good next year if he stays healthy. Probably the year after that, too. I'm betting he's looking for a big old deal that's going to give him at least 4 to 5 years. He's going to look real bad year 3, I bet. That's just what I'm betting on. Giroux, similar. 64 points in 75 games played. All about the term. He's leagues better than what Malkin is right now, in my opinion. But unless he wants to go for short-term, year-to-year, jump on cup contenders, see if I can win a cup, there's no way he ends up in Boston. because he needs to take less money than he's worth, and he wants to actually come here. I hate to say it, but it's not like any players right now are going, hey, Boston should have a couple more years of contention left. We don't look like that right now. Now, we might still be able to do it, but we don't look like that to players. Nor should we. These players aren't idiots. Pierre-Luc Dubois! He's an RFA. We're not even going to get a chance to bid on him because they'll just match our offer sheet and trade him to the highest bidder because they know they can trade him. He's a 24-year-old top 6 center. I want him. We're not going to get him. I feel like I keep bringing up guys that I just want and we're not going to get, but I want him. Then we're not going to get him. Ryan Strome, 55 points in 74 games. Great puck mover. So-so in the defensive zone, but not a liability. And he is an offensive threat. Here's the problem. Is he reliant on Panarin? Now, this was kind of a breakout year for him. It was one of his better ones, if it's not his best. But spending all that time with Panarin, you got to wonder, well, is he actually that good? Well, if you're the Boston Bruins, you go, fuck that. We have him on the line with Hall and Pasternak. I'm not worried that he no longer has Panarin. We'll be fine. This is a guy that's really, really interesting. He's 28 years old, should have at least a couple more really good years left, and does not have to drive the line himself. He has to be part of it, but he won't have to drive it himself, which would be massive. Another interesting one is Vincent Trocheck, and as hilarious as that would be, the Prius coming over to join the Lambo, I don't know if it works. Something tell me no one's going to be happy grabbing Trocheck for a $6 to $7 million contract. 51 points in 81 games played, 28 years old, just a really solid player, plays the game the right way for the most part, exiting his prime-ish, midway through his next deal. There should be a little bit of cliff potential. He doesn't move the needle for me, and I really can't tell you exactly why. Just watching him, I don't know. That's a guy that I feel like once the cliff hits, it's going to hit hard and it's going to hit out of nowhere. I don't like it. I don't like the idea of a Trocheck signing. What I do like the idea of is Andrew Kopp. This guy is on the top of a lot of teams' lists, which is a problem for me because we all need to stop talking about him because I really need him to sign a 4-year, $5 million deal. AAV, not just 4-year total $5 million. No, 4 years, $20 million deal. That's what I want. It's never going to happen. That's a pipe dream at best. The number is going to be higher. The term's probably going to be longer. 39 points in 55 games, 27 years old. But there's concern here. There's concern. This is why there might be a little bit of a chance for a lower contract. Because in a very confusing Jet system, he was okay. He was okay. And then he gets to the Rangers, and he's on fire for about 2 months. Just brilliant. I think he's somewhere in the middle. Probably closer to the brilliant player. But this is another guy who plays the game the right way. He's clever. He's skilled. He's just unfortunately also on the top of a lot of other teams' lists. But if I had my choice, who I want, it's got to be Kopp. It's got to be Kopp. That's the only guy that I can see with there might be enough prove-it deal potential there. A little bit lower on the money, a little bit lower on the term to really make this a great signing for us. But he's going to have to want to be here because that's the only way that happens. There's a chance, but that's who I want. I would take Giroux as a runner-up if it was a couple of years for a not crazy amount of money. Like if he did 2 years for $6 million, I'd be pretty pumped about that. So that would be kind of my runner-up situation. So we went through some names. I didn't think it was important to do 12 names per position. I didn't think that made sense. This team's in a very peculiar spot. In going through every single name, there's more reasons to say no to most players than there are to say yes with the way the Bruins are built right now. But as far as free agency goes, a perfect free agency offseason, not trades, free agency. We make some cap room. We get Kopp. All right? We get Kopp. We put him behind Bergeron. That's going to be some money right there. 5, 6 million, 7 million maybe. I don't know. I want him for a few years. The only other position, the only other deal that I really want to get made is a bridge deal for Marchment. Those 2 free agent pickups, massive. Nichushkin would be awesome. Don't get me wrong. But solving that second line center and then getting a guy who's a depth piece on the left side but has the potential to get moved up and around and might be way more value than his contract, those are the 2 swings I want to make. Throw in Nichushkin and it's really perfect. But those are the 2 names that I would go, you know what, yes. Even though one of them's out of position. Those are the 2 things that I think this team can do with limited cap space, moving, minimal bodies. That's it right there. All right, guys, that does it for me. Like, comment, subscribe. Down below, put what your thoughts are about the free agency class, who you want to look at. If you want more free agency talk, which there will be more, but if you want another video going over other guys, let me know. We'll talk about more players. I'm never going to get bored talking about these guys. I just thought this would be a good place to start. That's it. Okay, we nailed it. Go Bees!